Right, so time to get to the cards, right? So we have our crowd cheers, our revered mechanics, right? Our crowd boos for our reviled mechanics, and then our super surprises. So far, I think there's 14 cards revealed, right? 12 here, and then we also have some promos. So a nice little batch of cards to hint at the overall set mechanics. But before we do get to them, I definitely just want to go over the art, right? Because you take out the, again, the pageantry, the wrestler aspect, and this is just a really cool flesh and blood set to me, right? This is pretty nice artwork featuring the Deathmatch Arena. I think if it wasn't called Super Slam, if it was just called Deathmatch Arena, right? We had heavy hitters, now we have the actual Deathmatch, right? I don't know. But yeah, so there's young KO, there's a young Lyeth Goldmane, so Victor's, I guess, brother, but he's also a dwarf, right? Stubby. And then we have our unfortunately not Bard Guardian, right? Heck, I would have taken that, right? Revered Bard Guardian, just for the fact that I could play Final Act. I mean, Final Act and Guardian would be pretty crazy, I think, right? So Pleiades, and then we have Tough Nut, right? As our young, lovable goof, apparently so. Then, yeah, the adult version. I mean, you can't get any more fab than this, right? KO, missing his arm, standing on the top of a bunch of heads, it looks like, right? I mean, there's some bodies there, but it is, I don't know, it looks like there's dismembered heads as well. So, yeah, less wrestler aspect aside, this is still the nice guts and glory and gory flesh and blood that I definitely enjoy, right? It's to me, it's a bit more dark fantasy, at least these two, than High Seas, right? And then we have our nicer side. So again, Pleiades is our guardian bard, and then yeah, Tough Nut, right? Lovable big guy, right? But card wise, so first and foremost, we do know what is in the pre-release kit. It actually tells us on the product page, right? So it's 5 cold forms and 4 basics. Now this is kind of laughable to me, right? But yeah, so they've made the point. It's no weapons, but it being 5 cold foils, I assume it's 4 equipment pieces and then 1 fist, right? For you to use as your weapon. So it's that fists and wits, but in itself that would make it a weapon that you have equipped. But anyway, we'll have to see. It could be a 5th random cold foil, right? Could be something in the offhand, I don't know. But yeah, that's where my mind goes. 4 equipment pieces, as we saw with High Seas, and then 1 fist weapon for them all to use, along with 4 basics, which means 8 tokens in total, right? I assume they're flip side. It might be obviously the what are they called? The micro cards, the 2 little segments, which could have 4, right? Because there's 4 different slots, but they usually just double sided anyway. But, most likely 8 tokens in general. And once we start going through the cards, I'm sure we can line up a lot of them. And then we do also have the Pleiades Armory deck coming at the same time as the pre-release. So you can pick this up just like Gravy, and it will be a CC and Blitz compatible deck as well. And then for the Pleiades Armory deck, we do know it features 13 Majestics, 6 Super Rares, 21 Rares, 27 Commons, and 4 basics. So we can take out the usual equipment, so that's 4, right? So that brings up, and probably the hero as well, actually, so that's 5. So overall, no, 4 works better, right? Because if we take out 4, that's 9 Majestics, which would be 3 Majestics at 3 copies apiece, right? So yeah, I assume maybe she's a basic token. But, Gravy was a Majestic in his Armory deck. And then the 6 Super Rares are definitely nice. We've been getting, decent rares in the Armory deck, so they kind of feel like Super Rares to me anyway. So it's about, again, stock standard to the Armory decks that we've currently seen, right? But, with that aside, let's jump into the cards and start reading some of the fun effects. Right, we'll start off with the promos. So, we have 2. We have 1 for the new Reviled talent and 1 for the Revered talent, right? So again, these are our heroes and villains, our boos, our cheers, right? So, yeah, interesting nonetheless, but we have Bask in Your Own Greatness for our Reviled action attack, and Dig In for our Revered action attack, but both of them sport this new mechanic, right, of essentially X, but X with a hard cap, right? So when it stacks, you may pay up to 3 resources, create that many might tokens, and when this defends, you may pay up to 3 resources, create that many toughness tokens. So you use their normal cost, so Bask in Greatness, 0, Dig In, 3, and then you are able to pay up to 3 extra resources to create that many tokens, right? So yeah, basically X with a hard cap, right? So if you pay 3 resources, you get 3 might tokens, pay 3, you get 3 toughness, you pay 2, 2, 1, and 1, right? So yeah, nice little soft cap to these types of cards. I'm just trying to think and rack my brain around if there was like a easier way to display, right? X. you know, X with the greater than sign, less than sign. But no, this is probably as clean as they can get it, right? So 3 as the hard cap. So we will see this interaction a little bit more on some other cards, but there we go, right? 2 block on the Bask in Your Own Greatness and 3 block on the Dig In. Toughness is the one we don't know. Obviously, Might we do, so every resource is worth +1 on your following turn, which is definitely kind of nice, right? Might is crack at the side turn. I always forget. Might and courage, right? Might, I think, is all the heavy hitters ones were your next turn, right? And then the old school ones were they pop straight away. No, something like that. And then toughness, yeah, we have no idea. I assume it's equivalent to the again vigor, might, agility, but you know close to embodiment of earth. So probably at the start of your opponent's turn, it cracks, and then you get +1 on the next card you block with, something like that, which could definitely be nice, right? So this is a 6 block, but it's block an extra 3 on your following turn if that is toughness. But so far, that is 2 tokens for us to jot down, right? Then we have our heroes. So we'll start off with Pleiades Superstar, our revered guardian hero. Instant tap, remove a suspense counter from an aura you control. You may put a suspense counter on an aura of suspense that you control. And whenever the crowd cheers you, create a confidence token. Now, the problem here is the capitalization, right, is throwing us off. So crowd cheers you is essentially a keyword, but it's more of a trigger, if you will. So I doubt it will have any substantial effect by itself. But once that condition is met, you get these extra things. So as Pleiades, whenever the crowd cheers you on, you get to create a confidence token, and we will see a few different ways to make the crowd cheer, right? And then the aura of suspense. So either an aura of suspense is something you can create, right? As it's literally suspense as an aura token, right? Or if it's card labeled aura of suspense, or it could be an aura that you create suspense with, and I assume suspense would be maybe some way to delay the triggers. So Guardian has a lot of, you know, at the start of your turn, this gets destroyed, you get X effect. So if you could rack them up and use suspense counters to prevent that, that would be kind of insane, right? You could just play the whole game setting up, and then you have this really massive turn. That's where my mind goes, at least, when it comes to suspense. Obviously, we have no idea, right? We'll have to wait and see what suspense counters do. But yeah, overall interaction would be nice. Something specific, sure, why not, right? Then we have our Revered Brutes as our Tough Nut Bubbling Hulkster. Instant tap, pitch the top card of your deck. If it has 3 or more power, the crowd cheers you. Whenever the crowd cheers you, you get to create a Toughness token, but he starts with 3 intellect. So, instant tap, pitch the top card of your deck is definitely really nice, right? It is a little bit unfortunate, right, because of the way the tap mechanic works. So you only get 1 use. You use it on your turn, you untap, use it on your opponent's turn. You won't untap until the end of your next turn. So you are essentially 1 less card going into your opponent's turn, but your brutes, I doubt you have many things that you want to pitch into when it comes to your defensive side. So it shouldn't be too bad, but the nice fact of this is you get to pitch a card, and you also get that toughness token, right? Most likely as trigger, because he's, you know, the usual brute where you want to hit all your 6s. So yeah, resources plus extra block could definitely be really nice, but we'll have to wait and see what else lines up with it. Otherwise, the big thing that a lot of people have already kickstarted is obviously the rock, right? Using rock as a weapon definitely works a bit easier when you are able to pitch from the top of your deck, rather than obviously having to pitch from hand and not being able to actually activate the rock, because if you don't know what the rock is, I'll put it on screen, a little picture, right? So yeah, hand has to be empty to play it, right? It's a nice big brute beat stick, and it can't be defended. It's pretty cool. So yeah, interesting to see what people have cooked up with that, right? Then for our Reviled heroes, we have Guardian, our Lithe Goldmane Vile Savant. So we assume he is Victor's twin, right? And not my comment, but someone else's, Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? So yeah, he's the intelligent one, hence the 5 intellect, but he's also the short one, right? As opposed to nice, big, beefy Victor. But the base power and defensive cards you control are halved, but rounded up. Instant pay 2, tap, the crowd boos you. Defending action cards you control get +1 this turn. So an on-call pay 2 for Embodiment of Earth, but better Embodiment of Earth, right? It's pretty exciting, especially when you have that 5 intellect to work with. And then whenever the crowd boos you, you get to create a might token, right? So it's actually a little bit better, because it's pay 2 to give all your cards +1 block, which in the most case would mean they block for 3. So if you have a 3, 1.5 rounds up to 2, then it gets that +1. It's back to a 3 anyway. But then you get the might as well, which then goes into your attacks. Very, very interested to see where this lines up and how he gets built as a Guardian, right? Working with the base being halved, so obviously that's a lot more impactful for a lot of those bigger cards. But nonetheless, again, the 5 intellect to work with, right? And it's base, so if you are doing the whole setup shtick as Guardian, throwing out a whole bunch of auras, then you will really benefit from them, right? With that extra intellect to really just set up the real big stuff, right? That we've seen throughout the ages, but haven't really been super playful because again, spending that many resources on a card that doesn't have any impact till the following turn isn't always the smartest move, if you will, right? Then we have KO, our underhanded cheat. So he remains one-handed, right? You start the game with one weapon zone, instant, pay 4, tap. Target attack action card you control has 6 power, right? And whenever the crowd boos, you get to create a Vigor token. So definitely interesting. This I wanna definitely see what I can cook up, right? Converting X card to have 6 base power is definitely really, really interesting. Now, because it is a card you control, you can't use it on something you discard, right? If you randomly discard, you can't reactively use this to save the trigger. So yeah, it's definitely really interesting. I feel like that cost is super high though, right? Being at 4. But whenever you get booed, you get to create a Vigor token, and it does seem like you will be able to boo and cheer multiple times in a turn. So getting these token triggers is definitely really, really nice, right? So Vigor for KO. We have Might for Rathe, we have Toughness for Toughnut, and we have Confidence for Pleadus. So 2 new, and then the good old stock standard, a resource, and 1 extra power. Now, card-wise, right, we have a few Revered actions and a few Reviled. So, Crowd goes wild, 3 cost, and then if you've cheered this turn, this costs 3 less to play. So, yeah, this being a 0 for 6 potentially is super nice, right? Just nice big 0 for 6, as long as they've cheered you. And again, as Tough Nut, we can get that cheer. So him having a lot of big, cheap cards definitely makes up for that 3 intellect, right? Comeback Kit. When this attacks a hero, if you have less life than them, the crowd cheers you. If you've been cheered this turn, this gets +1. I'm kind of bummed that that's not a repeat trigger, right? Because this is a 3 for 7 that becomes a 3 for 8, so it's kind of just fair. It's not over the top, right? If it was every time they cheered you, it gets a +1, right? Or this gets a +1 for every time you've been cheered this turn, something like that. That would kind of have been cool. But it is just one trigger, right? So yeah, as long as you're on lower life, it is a 3 for 8. If you're not lower life, then you can probably make it easily a 3 for 8, because again, there seems to be plentiful amount of these cheer and boo triggers. Then for our Reviled, we have Bully Tactics. Right, 0 cost. When this attacks a hero, you may pay up to 3, intimidate them that many times. So this is a Reviled action, meaning that Intimidate is no longer just a brute thing. Guardian has Intimidate, which is definitely very, very interesting. So this will be halved as Rathe, right? So it becomes a 2, right? But it's a 2 that intimidates up to 3 times if you pay 3. That is pretty crazy, right? 3 intimidates for 3. That's fairly cheap. So yeah, again, you may pay up to 3 and then intimidate them that many times, right? So you pay 1, intimidate 1. You pay 2, intimidate twice. You pay 3, intimidate 3, right? But as I'm reading this card, that definitely seems utterly insane. And then we have Mocking Blow. When this attacks hero, if you have more life than them, the crowd boos you. If you've been booed this turn, this gets +4. So 0 for 5 if you've been booed. Definitely really nice, right? Or a 0 for 3. No, it's base. So this would still be a 0 for 5 if you're light. So this is definitely a huge card, right? A red 5, as long as you have less life. Or you've triggered that boot. And again, it seems easy enough to trigger those boots. Now, for our super rares. So these are our non-spec cards, right? So Thespian Charm for Pleadus, it is a Revered Guardian instant, meaning she is the only hero that can use it, but maybe someone in the future. Choose any number, right? Destroy a Might or Vigor token, the crowd cheers you, and return an aura permanent you control to its owner's hand. So that one's definitely interesting as to how it will work and what her aura play will essentially be. But yeah, choose any number. So you can destroy a Might or Vigor for your opponent, and that will have flexibility across all of Classic Constructed, not just in Limited, where it is that dynamic. The crowd cheers you just seems like an auto pick. I don't understand a rationale for you to ever not pick the crowd cheers you or the crowd boos you. And then the return and aura, right? Again, a bit more applicable to what you have on board. But yeah, nice 0 instant, do all 3 if need be, right? It's more of a do everything that you qualify for rather than pick, right? Then we have Numbskull Charm for our Tough Nut, another yellow instant, 0 cost, right? Revered Brute, so it is just for Tough Nut. I mean, they have their names on the card. Why is there this all of a sudden Cheyenne hate, right? Why can't these be specs? Why can't we just play around with fun new toys? Choose a number again, destroy a Confidence or Might token. The crowd cheers you, pitch the top card of your deck. If it has 6 or more power, create a Vigor token. Actually, that's something I didn't rationalize. So this plays against Rathe and Tough Nut, right? So Pleadus is against those two, rather than against the two Vile Heroes. That's interesting. And then Tough Nut is against Pleiades and KO, right? Confidence and Might. And then, of course, Crowd Cheers You, and then an extra pitch. So you're playing this just to pitch, but maybe get that Vigor token. That's definitely nice. Actually, no. Right. No one has Vigor. Tough Nut, I guess Tough Nut has Vigor. Now I'm very curious how they went with the Destroy triggers. Because, yeah, no, Tough Nut was Toughness, but he does have a Vigor trigger here. KO was Vigor, right? Yeah. So she plays against KO and Lyeth, right? And then Tough Nut plays against Lyeth and Pleiades. So I guess he doesn't want to pick on his, or I want to say Orcish brethren, because obviously they're green jolly giants, right? But whatever they are in Rathe, yeah? Then we have Lyeth's Charm for Lyeth. Choose any number, steal a Toughness or Vigor token. So you can steal from Tough Nut, or you can steal from KO or Tough Nut. Yeah, they had the Vigor triggers so far. The crowd boos you, and then target hero loses and can't gain abilities this action phase unless they discard a card. Again, definitely seems like you're definitely picking the bottom two, right? Or the third when you have one of those tokens to steal, yeah? And then we have Cheater's Charm for KO. Choose any number, steal a Confidence or Toughness token, so playing against Pleiades and Tough Nut. I guess he doesn't share the love. And the crowd boos you. If you control an attack with 6 or more power, deal 2 damage to target hero unless they discard a card. So a nice little bit of extra damage there, which could definitely, close out a game if they have to discard for that just for you to pummel them in the face anyway, right? So, yeah, these are definitely some nice super rares, but they are essentially dropping the barrel, being 4 out of the 40. So, very, very interested to see what else is there since they are getting these signature moves. But I assume that there'd be more super rares across the board. It won't just all be limited fun, right? Maybe they just go crazy. Anyway, that is all the cards for now. So, hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. There.